customer-centric, patient-centric assistance, and innovative management to achieve better results and the sustainability of this service in the long term. We also have a learning and development program that involves training people and doing research and educational initiatives. Our unit is represented by that box to the right. It is closely related to Cuidado, which is also in downtown São Paulo on Prates Street. So we refer patients to them, and they refer patients to us, depending on the context, depending on the specific needs of each patient. So we try to keep it simple. There is the jurisdiction of what they do. There's the jurisdiction or the perimeter of what we do. RAPIS can also refer patients to us, but there's what we call the Cuidado perimeter. But basically, we receive patients from the crackland area, crack users, crack dependents. They're referred to us, and then we start the care process. The first 3 floors of the building are dedicated to this first welcome, to this first screening process, this initial screening process. That's where we offer primary care. That's where we try to reduce the damage that is already done, and that's where we try to engage them with the treatment. So actually, it's not the end of the process. It's actually on the first 3 floors. We do this initial process. We do the screening, primary care, and then we refer them to specialized treatment. So, one of the quality indicators in this area is actually the number of referrals for treatment. We have a classical detox area and a monitored area for social reintegration, which is going to be the focus of my session today. I think I'm not going to read this slide, it's pretty long, but our values are extremely important to us. They involve attention and care for people, respect for individuals and for the common good, commitment to scientific evidence, teamwork in cooperative and ethical ways, and respect for the public good, because we are actually using public funds to do this. We're publicly funded. These are the processes. It's a flow chart of what we do there, like the macro processes for primary care, assistance, treatment, and reintegration, and also referral. This first photo shows how our counselors, well, it shows a counselor who works with us talking to a patient. In the coexistence center, we have a gym center, a kitchen, bathrooms. It's well equipped for them to take care of themselves. There's an area for them to listen to the radio, to listen to music. There is also this type of session for the gay or the LGBTQ population, because actually we notice that the LGBTQ are more vulnerable in a way, because if this type of center is mixed with other genders, they feel discouraged because they suffer violence on the street, so they're afraid of going to this type of rehab center sometimes, but we have a special program for them. This is the monitored area. It's a bedroom, like there are bedrooms for a few people, laundry area, a mini kitchen. We have weekly meetings. They do urinalysis twice a week to make sure they're clean, because actually we offer housing, what we call monitored housing, but the monitored housing is for the final stretch of the treatment where we have to keep them clean. We have to keep them clean because they're already in the maintenance phase of their treatment, and at the same time we have to encourage and we have to promote their autonomy. We have to enable them to be self-reliant and take care of their own lives with autonomy, independence, with their own income, with, again, enable them to be self-reliant. The population we treat is not very different from the population Clarice described here. Pretty much crack users, homeless, living in downtown São Paulo. So again, this is also a little bit about the demographics. We need to know the population we're going to care for, and we have to know not only the population in general in the area, but also those who seek us. Most are males, no income at all, unemployed or unemployed for a long time. Usually they have been unemployed for a long time. We ask them questions about changes in drug use during the pandemic. Some report that they started using more drugs during the pandemic. The pandemic increased their use. 33% said that. 36% said there was a decrease in their consumption of drugs. No changes for this part of the population, and 9% say they changed. Some say they are using less or quit, and they say that they quit because of the pandemic. Still, we have an admission questionnaire, an admission form when they seek us, so to learn more about them, to learn more about their current situation. There are many questions like I highlighted a few questions. It's a long form actually, but I highlighted a few just to try and show you the factors that predispose them to do drugs ever since their childhood. For example, the parents or someone in the household, caregivers, their guardians, had violence at home, so they come. We ask them about their family, if they come from broken families. 45% of them say that they come from broken families where violence was frequent. Some say that the violence was not that frequent. Some say that it was rare, but still, we can clearly see that many of them have been exposed to risk factors since their childhood, and this is important because it makes me think about prevention. It makes me think about doing prevention work in the low-income neighborhoods, in the outskirts of our big cities, because that's where these people will come from. That's where most of them will come from, at least. That's where they will go to school. That's where their families live. Other questions like, have you ever been hurt? 14% will say very frequently. A question like, have you ever been beaten until you got a bruise or something? 32% reported yes. So now people who come from very violent backgrounds. Here I try to outline a profile of our female patients, of our female participants. All of them have been pregnant at least once. 67% of them did drugs while pregnant, and many of them had problems because of that. Preterm babies, which was the most frequent, low-weight babies, low weight at birth, or miscarriages, babies who need to go to ICU right after their birth. But what happened more frequently was premature babies, preterm babies, and low-weight babies. That's very frequent, very common among our female participants. They don't use crack only because we have the monitored. This is the final stage of the treatment, the final stretch, as we call it. So these patients have already been treated. They received care. They were they have been with us for some time. They were in the coexistence center for some time. They bake cakes, they interact with other patients. They are assisted by specialized professionals who encourage them, who get to know them. They establish a bond. They're referred to treatment. They are detoxed. So when they come to the collective housing area, or when they go to this monitored, and then they go to the therapeutic community, and then from the therapeutic community they go to this housing area where they can spend some time. It's open. They can come and go freely anytime they want. Of course, there are some rules. And these rules are usually designed or agreed on in our weekly meetings. There's the CAPES unit, which helps us with the health care of these patients. We also do the urinalysis to monitor them, and it's not that we do that to kick them out of the program if they get caught, right? If they're not clean or something, they're not going to get kicked out. But if we start to get positive tests, positive urinalysis repeatedly, we will intensify the treatment of those patients, meaning we can add a special counselor for that person, for that individual, make sure this individual receives special counseling or some sort of intervention inside the housing area, or they can even take a step back and go back to the nursing area, to the outpatient area, to the therapeutic community, and then back to the monitored housing area. It's interesting because at the monitored housing we lose about 5% of our participants. Only 5% of them actually relapse and go back to the street, some don't even come back to pick up their stuff. And then we lose contact with them for good. About 65% of them complete the treatment, they finish the treatment, and the remaining 30% take a step back in their treatment. They go back to the previous stages, and that's actually the advantage of having a line of care, a continuum of care, an integrated program to treat drug addicts. Because and since we work together with Kratod and other units, we have this complete, thorough care approach that comes from the emergency support, primary care, observation, monitoring, like for 72 hours. They are referred to specialists. They participate in the process, so they're asked whether they want to go to a medical community, a religious community, where they want to go. If they cannot go to the monitored housing area yet, they go to the detox area, and then when they're at the detox phase, they start receiving support from CAPS, and then from there they can go to a community that is associated with the Restart program, and then they can go back, and then they can go to the monitored housing. And again, most of them leave the process with a job, with a formal job, with some level of income, with some level of self-reliance. So I understand this project has been designed in the state of São Paulo. I am proud of it because it has a complete line of care. It treats drug addicts from beginning to end. They usually use marijuana, crack, tocha, which is like that final waste of crack. When they smoke crack, some ashes are left, and then they smoke the ashes. Cocaine, they snort cocaine. The levels of tuberculosis there. Tuberculosis is prevalent there. The prevalence of tuberculosis is very high, but good news is that more than 80% of them complete the tuberculosis treatment. 83% of them complete the tuberculosis treatment. but 17% do not. They are a major cause of concern to us, and that's where we see room for improvement. We are focused on improving our processes, and we're currently focusing on our tuberculosis patients. Syphilis also has some good news. 100% of them complete the syphilis treatment, of course, because syphilis is much simpler to treat than tuberculosis. Tuberculosis demands a lot more compliance, and it takes much longer. They have to take pills every day. Hepatitis B, also 100% of them finish the treatment. Hepatitis C, few of them started the treatment because, but of those who did, 100% of them completed the treatment. When they, and this is also exit data. This is how they are admitted to our unit. So this is how we admit them, and this is admission data, and this is discharge data. And I think this is very interesting because they're discharged with some level of income, some income, 2 to 3, well, up to most of them up to one minimum wage, and then 2 to 3, and 8% of them leave. They are discharged with no income or welfare. Usually, these are the ones we can reintegrate into their families, when we can reestablish a family bond, and then they go back home, they go back to their families. Those who are discharged with some income, they often prefer not to go back to their families because their families are sometimes risky environments. Their families also have users or a background, a history of drug abuse and alcohol abuse, so they would rather fend for themselves and live alone. 42% of them said that they could rescue or rekindle their family bond, but they say that it was not their, some say that that was not their intention, precisely because of what I just said, precisely because their families can be triggers and risky settings. 73% had no relapse while they were in our housing, but 30% of them had some relapse during the last month, and then 17% over a month ago. And this is the group where we focus our efforts and the treatment. Another important data here is that even if they relapse, we don't lose them. We don't lose these individuals. They may take a step back, but they stay with the program, they stay in the process. So this is something that's reason for celebration, that's cause for celebration. This is a scale that assesses their perception of our service. There are basically 4 questions here. So, how much better do you feel in terms of alcohol consumption? How has your alcohol consumption improved? So here, their top score is 7. And again, this gives us food for thought because, well, even though they're clean and even though they are reintegrated to some extent, they sometimes are discharged. They leave the program feeling insecure about alcohol, and this shows how powerful this dependency can be. They leave the program feeling more aware of how powerful chemical dependency is and what chemical dependency has done to them. So they're aware of the risks, and they're aware of how powerful this dependency can be. That's what makes them insecure. That's my interpretation of it anyway, but I guess I'm right. And as for their health, their score is usually above 7. They say that their health has improved overall. They give it their score is high, like 8. They say that overall their health is substantially better than it was when they joined the program. I also, and then there's another question about self-reliance, if they feel capable of doing their things, and that's something we want to achieve. And this is an important outcome we monitor, and their score is also usually above 7 here. Most of them feel more self-reliant and capable of minding their own business and doing their things, taking care of themselves, providing for themselves, which shows some level of autonomy. Another question is, do you think you're a good member of your community? Their general score is also over 7, which means that when they leave the program, they feel more integrated into the society. So some come to us, some patients come to us, and then when they start earning some money, they can have a credit card. And the bank manager says, okay, here you have a credit card. You have, like, I don't know, 200 reals. And they don't even know what credit is. They don't know what credit is. They think that sometimes they say, oh, okay, there was a guy the other day who got a credit card, and the manager said he had 200 reals in credit, and he just went to a store and bought a pair of sneakers. So after some episodes like that, that was not the only case. So when they get an income, when they get a job, and according to our continuous improvement mindset, we now have a program for the financial education of our participants to help them manage their money, manage their finances. Some patients, in the beginning, when they start to earn their own money, they ask our staff to go to the store with them, to go to the bank with them, because they ask our professionals to help them in the beginning, because they say, what if I go downtown alone again with money in my wallet, because I don't know how I'm going to behave. So they've been beggars for a long time, so they don't know what to do with the money they earn with their work. So we already have some initiatives in place to help them manage that and use their money in the best possible way. These are just a few stories, but they're very impactful. I also have some data here to show you. There's some data for the monitored housing area. This is unpublished data, very just fresh data, and this is like historical data from the beginning of the operations. This is brand new information. We just gathered this. We've seen 300. We've treated 325 patients there. Most were males, but we also see some transgenders. We've treated 14 transgender patients there. The stay time in the monitored housing varies from 94 days for transgenders, males 145 days, females 82 days. Here, there are many interpretations here, many are possible, but my impression is that women sometimes have more severe conditions than men. They have more comorbidities, and honestly, the services are not adapted to treat female patients. Some females do not go to the monitored housing area because they have children, so they don't want to go there with their children. So there's still room for improvement in that sense. benefits that are benefits for senior citizens, new documents, welfare, integration into the banking system. And there's also a follow-up that we did until 2019. That's the results of our follow-up survey, and many of them, you see, in terms of housing, many of them, even after they leave the program, they can have their own home. Many of them reestablish their family bonds. In 2017, 80% of them reestablished family bonds. In 2019, about 60% of them were able to reintegrate with their families. The percentage of dropout is pretty low. They have this customized care, so and this is how the service works for the population that Clarice has just shown you. This is what the service looks like. I think there's this video here. I don't know if we can play it. I think so. I don't know how to play it, but I think we can play it. It's just a video that shows what it looks like in the area downtown, just for you to get a picture of it, just for you to get a picture of what they call the flow. Maybe the file is too heavy, but you see, no, I can play it. This is the population moving around the city. It's a crowd. It's a crowd of very sick people. There are some very sad stories there. We have witnessed some very sad stories, like even patients who died in the coexistence center, for example. They died out of intoxication, poisoning, or a psychotic patient. The other day, there was a psychotic patient with a cobblestone in his hands. There was a helicopter hovering above us, and he said, "They're watching me. They're watching me, and I'm going to throw this stone on the helicopter." A psychotic patient, a kid, no older than 16, and he was completely psychotic. So this is the type of patient we treat there. People who throw stones at helicopters. So thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you, Clarice, for the amazing research you do. Thank you for the epidemiological data you collect. I'm comfortable to say that today Clarice is Brazil's most prominent researcher in this area. She is doing the finest research in chemical dependency in downtown São Paulo. At LECUCA, she has been doing some really outstanding work that can inform decision making. So thank you, Kátia, for your master class, and that was it.
It's an immense, huge pleasure having you here, and we are going to have an international lecture now. It's going to be online. The lecturer is Dr. Hemi Holzheisen. She is going to talk about prevention, marijuana, and a change of scenario. She's the president of Drug Free America. and I took part on a training with her at the UN. She's extremely active in the